Hello everyone, it is I, the Golden Scouta, bringing you the first of a new series, Which is Better, and today I have with me Dragon Ball Dad. No more fitting of a person to actually discuss this with, so how are you doing today?
I'm doing brilliant. It's fantastic to be back talking about Dragon Ball. It's been a long time since we did this, so yeah, two iconic arcs. It's going to be great diving into it.
Yeah, definitely. First we talked about Yu Yu Hakusho, now Dragon Ball, two of some of the best shonen out there. But today we're talking about which is better, what aspects did each arc do better, and those are the Frieza versus Cell arc. So where to start, other than the start? So in the Frieza arc we have everybody winding down from the Saiyan arc, and then in the Cell arc it starts off with Frieza returning, and then Trunks hacking him up, and King Cold up. So, which do you think is the better start?
This is definitely Trunks. Like, that arrival is one of the most iconic Dragon Ball moments ever, and probably in terms of like character introductions. The introduction of Trunks is just handled so well, because everybody just remembers that scene of him appearing and then the arms moving around, and there's another Super Saiyan, and that little interaction with Goku, and you learn about his dire history. You know, it's just one of the best introductions of characters in all of Dragon Ball, and it's hard to kind of top that moment in terms of beginning an arc. The Saiyan arc started off a little slower with the whole journey to Namek, and obviously you get that big moment when you first encounter Frieza, when you see him travel past, and everyone just goes, Jesus, this guy's on another level. We need to wait for Goku to get here. But yeah, the introduction of Trunks just taking down Frieza, who was like a threat we've never seen before so easily, and then the interaction with Goku where he blocks the sword with a finger. It's just a great character introduction, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's a reason why almost every single promo that you'd see for Trunks would always be him hacking up Frieza and killing King Cold. And then I like the whole winding down from the Saiyan arc about how like everybody's like, oh no, what are we gonna do? The Dragon Balls are inactive and there's no way for us to revive our friends. And then Kaio gives the idea of like, hey, why not go over to Namek?
Yeah, I do like the journey to Namek. I think you get the interesting dynamic of Gohan and Krillin really like built upon, which is one of like the best double acts in Dragon Ball, and that sort of relationship forms a lot more on the way to Namek and throughout Namek than it did in the Saiyan arc, where there was just like the brief interactions during the battles. So I think it was good for like character building, the early start of the journey to Namek, whereas with the Cell arc, it's not really like character building. It's sort of like a instant, this threat is now, you know what I mean, compared to the slow build of the Freeza arc.
Yeah, because it actually gives a reason for Gohan and Krillin to actually kind of build like that uncle-nephew type relationship, I guess. Like, and yeah, I do agree that there isn't really like character building moments. Like, I mean, sure, Trunks is connected to Bulma, but there isn't like this whole bond from like Vegeta or Trunks, and like I would even say not until the very end, just because of Vegeta being who he is, and then even whenever he finds him out, he still punches him in the gut whenever Trunks tries to warn him about things. I mean, the whole thing is Trunks returning is like the most epic thing, and then I would say that the Saiyan arc is more kind of just the characters kind of coming together, really trying to figure out how to problem solve and work around this whole reviving their friends thing. And I like that, but I think nothing really compares to the epicness of Trunks coming in and killing Frieza and King Cold.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think it's just iconic. And the build-up we get in between in the Android arc isn't as good as with the Freeza arc. Because like I say, in Frieza, we have Gohan and Krillin arrive, think it's going to be nothing, and then they just see all these crazy power levels around. Whereas in the androids, you just have like the training period before the wrong androids turn up. So I think in terms of escalation to the threat, I probably would say the Saiyan arc is better to me, because it was just such a shock moment when you see them go from this is going to be easy to nah, this isn't going to be easy.
Yeah, I mean, you do kind of get a fake out in the Cell arc, because everybody thinks like, oh yeah, we've over prepared for you guys whenever they're talking to 19 and 20. Like, that's what Piccolo says anyway, like, oh yeah, we prepared for you. Turns out you guys aren't really that strong, and then it actually turns out, like, hey, these aren't the real artificial humans. It's actually 17 and 18. And that's whenever I think that things get interesting, because you kind of get different dynamics, like where it's the heroes, then 17, 18, and 16, and then later Cell. Because, like, one of the things I really like about the Frieza arc is how there's all these divergent storylines and goals that are happening. Like, it's Gohan and Krillin and Bulma doing their own thing, then it's Vegeta doing his own thing, and then it's Frieza doing his own thing, and all that. And so it's these three forces trying to accomplish their own goals, and it kind of brings you back to the original arc of Dragon Ball, the Pilaf arc, where you're kind of wondering, like, at least the first time whenever you watch it, like, oh, who's going to get their hands on the Dragon Balls, and what's going to happen here? Who's going to be the one to make the wish? But in the Cell arc, there really isn't that until Cell shows up, and at that point, I don't really see how the arc really revolves around the Dragon Balls at all, because it really is more so just about defeating this big threat. And while that's really, really good, and I think it was executed nicely despite some of the plot holes, which I would say one of them is, why didn't they wish away the heart virus? And then whenever Cell explains his origin, it becomes so confusing.
Yeah, time travel is always a kind of risky way to go. I think it's not the worst example of time travel, but it always makes things messy. I do think it introduced a nice dynamic to kind of Vegeta when he finally kind of has a few moments with Trunks, but I do think his character regressed from the Freeza arc. I think during Namek, Vegeta developed really, really well towards the end, like acknowledging Goku, things like that. He sort of took a step back during the Cell arc with some of the really bad decisions he made. But then again, looking at Dragon Ball Super, I guess that's Vegeta's character is always up and down.
Yeah, I mean, some of the arcs and, like, the Moro arc, like, I would probably say kind of corrected him, but that's beside the point. I mean, one of the things I've noticed about the Cell arc is that the plot pretty much can only continue because the heroes keep making mistakes. Like that they don't wish to see Android 20's location, and then Piccolo forgets to sense Cell, so Cell is able to find 17 and 18 that way. And then Vegeta and Krillin mess up by letting Cell become perfect, but whenever you actually look at the Freeza arc, the only one who really makes a mistake there is Frieza, and that's just because he's the Emperor of the Universe, and there's no reason for him to actually feel like he has to do things. Because yeah, I mean, whenever Vegeta got away with the Dragon Balls, he could have gone instead of Zarbon, but it makes total sense with Frieza's character since he thinks he's so far above everybody. And I can't really reconcile that with the Cell arc, just the heroes messing up so much.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Frieza obviously sees any threat as someone that could never ever touch him, you know, after all he's got these forms, he's got these power that nobody else could ever compare to, especially not a monkey, in his eyes. So I like that. I think in terms of like actual action and fights, like which arc would you say had the better fights? Because I was just saying in terms of like action and battles that we actually get in these arcs, I would actually say the Cell arc has better fights. You just mentioned one with 17 and Piccolo, like that is iconic. And in the terms of the Cell battles, I actually think Cell and Goku is my favourite battle in the Cell arc. I think that's just choreographed absolutely brilliantly, and then you get obviously the explanation of he wanted Gohan to see the battle, but I actually prefer that fight to the Gohan Cell fight. I don't know if that's quite a rare opinion, but I just thought the Goku Cell one looked incredible.
Yeah, I mean, that's not really that hot of a take. I mean, I've seen everybody... I've never seen anybody who said that Gohan versus Cell is better than Goku versus Cell. Like, that anime fight is great. Like, it's kind of reminds me about how the filler fight between Goku and Kid Buu was really, really good before he even went Super Saiyan 3. I think a lot of the things about the Cell arc is that it has better moments, but I have noticed that it does kind of come to the expense of some characters, because during the whole Frieza arc, it feels like that Gohan, Krillin, and Vegeta, Goku, that they all have vital roles to play pretty much the entire time until Frieza transforms into his third form. But I guess like one of the tiny bit issues that I have with the Cell arc is that the characters who do really cool things, they have their moment, and then they're just kind of cast aside for the rest of the arc. Like, Piccolo has his good fight with 17 and Cell, and then once Cell comes in powered up, Piccolo's pretty much rendered obsolete. Ten Shinhan has his one good moment, and then he's rendered obsolete. Vegeta defeats semi-perfect Cell, rendered obsolete. Trunks is rendered obsolete right from the get-go, and then once Cell kind of defeats Goku, it's kind of just implied that, you know, Gohan pretty much is the only one who has a real shot at this, and so I guess that's like one of my small criticisms, but the great thing about it is at least all these characters get to have great moments before they're cast aside.
Yeah, they all get the time to shine. I would say, in terms of times to shine, which arc is better? I think the good thing about both arcs is they both put Goku out of the equation well, with Goku having to travel to Namek and Goku being ill. So that gives the side characters, or I suppose you would call Gohan the main character of the Cell arc in many ways, their moments. I think in terms of the big moments in Namek, though, a lot of it is people trying to just survive, stay out of trouble. You get some really great Gohan moments in Namek, but I think the big moments do just go to Goku in that arc. Like, his arrival absolutely steals the show when you see everybody's just struggling against the Ginyu Force. You know, it's nice to see Krillin and Gohan get these power-ups, but they're just not at the level. And I think a lot of the problems that you described in the Cell arc about it just focusing around kind of the same characters actually come from Namek, where we get the power escalation of the Zenkai boost, creating this kind of issue where the other characters can't keep up. That sort of plagues Dragon Ball from that moment forward. So it's kind of counterproductive. I guess Namek gives more shine to Krillin, Gohan and Vegeta. I think those three, when they have to team up, worked really well. And then it's more individual battles in the Cell arc where you have Piccolo is ahead of everybody, and then it sort of swaps. Whoever's the strongest character is in charge. Whereas on Namek, it is always a case of Vegeta is getting injured to get stronger, but we all know it's waiting for Goku to arrive. So I guess it shares it out more in the Cell arc as we move on to kind of Gohan ending up the strongest.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you said. And just to kind of bring up a point of where you're talking about, like, the power-ups in there, I actually like the whole Room of Spirit in Time better than I do just Zenkai's and the Great Elder. Because, I mean, the Great Elder kind of makes sense that he would have some kind of a strange power like that just because of, like, how Nappa and Vegeta on Earth were saying, like, oh, Namekians have really strange magical abilities. Like, oh, wow, this guy's a warrior Namekian. Normally, they're ants and all that. And so to me, it makes sense about why the Great Elder would have these amazing powers to bring out all this latent power. And because, like, the whole thing is, by the time that Gohan and Krillin arrive on Namek, like, they have to have a way to keep up with everyone, because at that point, all the real threats are pretty much Vegeta level and beyond. So you kind of had to have a way to do it. I would say that the only thing that I would criticize about the Room of Spirit in Time is it kind of brings up that whole point of, like, oh, why didn't they use it in the Saiyan arc? And I think that if they would have written it to where it was 100 times Earth's gravity instead of 10 times, and just write out the whole thing of Goku ever spending time in there at all, I think it would have made perfect sense there, because 10 times Earth's gravity you could probably get into, because Goku did it at the beginning of Dragon Ball Z, where he was maybe like 300-400 power level, but you know for a fact the humans got past that, so it kind of makes you wonder, like, hey, why didn't they spend any kind of time in there? And so yeah, it's one of those things, but I think that the Cell arc executes it pretty well despite that plot hole. Because, I mean, another thing I'll bring up is plot holes to me aren't necessarily a killer to me whenever it comes to things, because take Back to the Future Part 2, for instance, like, it's interesting to see Marty go and see his future self, even though logically it would be impossible, because once you go forward in the future, you're leaving that time period and there's no way for your future self to be there. But so I guess if that makes sense, like execution can trump over plot holes in certain instances.
Yeah, and I like the trading aspects of these two arcs, because when you like fast forward the Buu arc, it's just sort of gone out the window, and it's all kind of different ways of increasing power, which I don't think are very Dragon Ball. Like these two arcs at least have Goku training on the way there in the gravity, and then you have the Room Spirit time. I like the trading arcs. You get like the sense of payoff from them that like modern Dragon Ball doesn't have to me. So I think these are the last two kind of great training arc payoff moments that you get. You get Goku arriving, and then you obviously get the arrival of Gohan on the scene after the training. So I like the use of training in these two arcs, definitely. In terms of kind of villains, I think obviously Frieza is a much better written villain in terms of his personality and his history with the Saiyans. But I would say First Form Cell is probably the scariest of the two. I think that like kind of pure horror aspect of him was really, really well done. And I guess in terms of history, I guess the android's backstory with Trunks works really, really well, but not as well as the whole Saiyans history with Frieza, even though that's obviously been changed around a little bit with different Dragon Ball sources.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing with Future Trunks, that storyline, I believe, is inspired by Terminator, and anybody in the comment section could probably verify that for me, but kind of what you were saying about villains, like, whenever it comes to Frieza and his henchmen, like Dodoria Zarbon and the Ginyu Force, versus androids 19, 20, 16, 17, and 18, who do you think are the better ones? Because, like, for me, I do not know any people who are fans of Dodoria or Zarbon. Very similarly, that I don't know any people who are fans of 19 and 20. But there are a lot of people who are fans of the Ginyu Force, and a lot of people who are fans of 16, 17, and 18. But who do you think are the more interesting, like, side villains?
So I would probably go for 17 and 18 out of these, because for me the Ginyu Force, for all the abilities, were interesting, and I think as like a visual spectacle the battle was good when you see like Gohan and Krillin get frozen and Vegeta just jump in and kill them, and then Raccoon crush everyone. I think that battle is really well done. I think 17 and 18's kind of history with Trunks, and you're having the alternative versions, and that moment when Vegeta just gets absolutely crushed, when you really realise, oh, these are really a threat, and you see them take down like Trunks and Vegeta, two Super Saiyans at once, which at the time was like, these guys, and how could these possibly be stopped? And then the threat escalates again with Cell. So I think that like escalation of threat in the Android arc worked really well, because like you said earlier, you get the original two, not really a threat, then these two appear. How could you possibly stop these? It would have to go do the training even if Cell hadn't arrived, interestingly. So yeah, I do think the androids have the better side villains. The Ginyu Force were more kind of comedy to me, rather than actually feeling like impossible monsters. Even though you had that feeling that Goku was just gonna step in and own them after watching him train like that.
Yeah, I mean, whenever I first watched it, it actually surprised me a lot. I mean, I thought that Goku might have a hard time fighting them. Like, I thought that there was going to be this big showdown of Goku versus Raccoon, and that we were going to actually see some blows getting exchanged. I mean, especially since, like, Budokai 1, and, like, a lot of the Dragon Ball games actually have Goku fighting Raccoon. And I think that for a lot of people, especially if they haven't watched the show first, they might actually think that there was a real fight between them, and then also a real fight between Birder and Chase and Goku, but there wasn't. And then it also doesn't help either that after a short fight with Ginyu, Goku just uses the regular Kaioken. You can go Kaioken times 10, and that's already enough to where Ginyu's just like, oh my god, I have no chance of beating you. You're a Super Saiyan. And then with 17 and 18, you have this whole history with them about how they pretty much demolished Trunks' timeline. You have the History of Trunks special, which actually makes them into being really, really good villains. So yeah, I agree with you that the side villains take the cake whenever it comes to the Cell arc. I just think that they're better than the Freeza arc, definitely.
I think like it was just too much comedy with the Freeza villains. I know it was kind of sort of needed. They worked well early on for me when it was not even like the major villains. It was when we see them kill Dende's brother, and I thought like there was really, really well done. And you see like Gohan not be able to like control himself and still go out and attack. I thought that was well done, but the Ginyu Force themselves had too much comedy for me personally just to get involved. I like the changing bodies with Goku was good. That had some good moments, and having like Gohan and Krillin fight against him. But yeah, it wasn't the same sort of seriousness as the Cell arc. But maybe too much seriousness could be a negative as well, because I know a lot of people like that style of comedy.
Yeah, I see that. I mean, there's a reason why the Pride Troopers exist. They're basically the Ginyu Force rebooted. And then, just talking about Cell and Frieza, I actually think that Frieza's the better villain, and I'd say a big reason too is just the way he was introduced and the way he was handled, just because, like, usually whenever characters, like, prior to this, like, anytime they've ever done, like, Ki Blast, like, they usually have to get in position, they have to, like, really emphasize their movements with their hands and stuff, but Frieza just, like, points at things and just demolishes them with like very little effort. And I mean, especially like one filler scene where he just breathes and he takes out 3 Namekian warriors who were like 10,000 power level.
Frieza was just incredibly scary. I love like the way he speaks and everything is like that voice acting in both the dub and the sub is just fantastically well done. Like you just don't expect that voice to come out of the body, and the sheer hate he has. But it is where we have to do everything to catch him up. Like you think we've finally gained, and then you get these transformations. And I think like I know we have the transformations with Cell, but I think the Freeza transformations were really, really well done. I much prefer them to Cell's. And his motivations I think are more interesting than Cell's, because with Cell you just get this moment where he's like, I'm going to do a tournament, and even Trunks is like, what? Well, what do you mean you want to do a tournament? Like Cell, I think Frieza is just a better written character, whereas Cell is more. I probably like first form Cell best. I think that kind of creepy monster in the shadows worked better than the perfected Cell, who just wanted to test his strength. I don't think it's as interesting as Frieza's motivation of dominating the world and being the superior race.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, the whole thing with Cell is his journey is actually better than his destination, honestly. I mean, especially after he absorbs 17, I kind of think he goes downhill, especially whenever he becomes a whiny baby against Vegeta. It's just like, man, you're so pathetic. But, like, I mean, Frieza has that, but it's because he's cut in half. And that's more understandable than just being like, oh, I want to be perfect.
Yeah, exactly. And I think Frieza, the only thing was wasted with Frieza really was possibly I would have liked to see his father do a bit more against Trunks because of the build-up, but then that would have took away from Trunks' introduction. So I think Frieza was used absolutely perfectly. Cell, like you say, Cell has his moments, but he's not the same sort of iconic level of villain for a reason. Like there's a reason that it's Frieza that comes back all the time nowadays, whereas Cell has never been one to return.
Yeah, I kind of felt like that they pretty much did what they wanted to with Cell, because, like, what are they going to really do with Cell besides just him be, like, a Frieza, except for instead of hating Goku, he hates Gohan. And, I mean, with Frieza, there's just a lot more history with him. He's more of an iconic villain. I think that there's more of a chance for him to grow, because, like, the whole thing is that Frieza is pretty much a self-actualized character from the very start, whereas Cell isn't. And then once he actually, like I said, like once he completes his journey, he suddenly just becomes like a very generic villain. Like, I mean, he does have like Saiyan cells and then Frieza cells, which influence his personality, which is pretty interesting on its own. But I would probably just say that even if we don't count anything in Super, we don't count ROF, we don't count Tournament of Power, we don't count what happened at the Granola arc or Broly, I think that Frieza is just the better villain.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Well, what I'm interested in is which transformation that gets the victory. Do you prefer the Super Saiyan 1 transformation or Gohan Super Saiyan 2? Like, I'm really interested in your take on that.
I actually would say that I prefer Gohan's Super Saiyan 2 transformation because we finally get the payoff to everything that we've been seeing. Like his shot against Raditz, his blast against Nappa. I mean, him raging out against Frieza twice. All those things didn't really amount to too much except for the Raditz headbutt, and that only just allowed him to be weakened enough for Goku to hold him in place.
Yeah, I can see that. The build-up for Gohan for that moment was incredible across from, like you say, multiple arcs. Super Saiyan 1, for me, I preferred just that moment when like Krillin dies. That Goku Frieza battle, before he goes Super Saiyan, you think, oh, he's finally beat Frieza. Like, they threw everything at him and then he's back. And then, yeah, just that change. And after the full build-up, you know, Vegeta begging him, you know, to avenge the Saiyans, you were the Super Saiyan, and everyone mentioned it all the time. I really like that. I think sort of got watered down, even though I loved Trunks' introduction, just everybody being Super Saiyan suddenly sort of watered it down. And I would guess with Super Saiyan 2, how Gohan ends up after the Cell arc maybe waters down that moment a little bit, but in the moment, I preferred the Goku transformation. And Goku as a character, I think, is used well in both arcs, but I think Goku is used better in the Cell arc. I think that passing the message that he tries to Gohan, and like try to teach Gohan about not being overconfident, and the whole Sensu giving Cell a Sensu being the debate that caused. I like Goku a lot. I think he is really well used in the Cell arc, even though he's ill. He's probably, I wonder which arc he's in more in terms of chapters, because obviously he's not on Namek at first and then he's out, but I think Goku as a character is used well in both arcs, but better in the Cell arc, whereas I would say Vegeta was used better in the Freeza arc, and I would say Gohan develops nicely across the both of them. Would you say like Goku was used better in one arc or the other, or?
I would probably say both for different reasons. I mean, Goku just is the star of the Frieza arc, definitely, because it gets down to a point where Goku's really the only one who can fight Frieza. And then in the Cell arc, you kind of have this whole thing where Goku is trying to, at least at the end, try to pass things down to Gohan, especially after he died. And I think that they both are great for their own reasons, because Goku's fight against Frieza in the manga, in my opinion, is really, really good. In the original Z anime, it drags on a little bit too much, but then they fixed it in Kai. But I think that both of the Super Saiyan Goku versus Frieza fight and the Super Saiyan 2 Gohan versus Cell fights both have kind of, I don't know if you'd call them issues or pluses or minuses, but Cell and Frieza both never stood a chance, respectively. The only reason why there was kind of tension during the whole Kamehameha battle with Gohan was because he got injured. But then it got cleared up right away, and I'd probably say that the Cell arc just had the better ending overall, just because I've heard people say, like, oh, imagine if it ended at the end of the Frieza arc, and I think that is terrible. And the reason why is just because there'd be so many unanswered questions, like, especially with the Namekians, like, can't they just create new Dragon Balls and revive Goku? Because if they would have just ended it like that would have been so unsatisfactory, and it just would have not felt like Dragon Ball, especially since the last that we would have seen of Goku is him screaming, being like, no, Planet Namek's about to explode, I can't stop it. Whereas, at least in the Cell arc, he actually says, like, hey guys, don't bring me back. I'll let you guys carry on and protect Earth. I'm gonna stay dead. All that kind of stuff. I think that the Cell arc, if they were going to end it prematurely, that would have been the place to do it, but I mean, obviously we got more, but so that didn't happen.
To me, that would have been the perfect end after the Cell arc. Like, I think Goku passes the message on, well, doesn't want to bring any more threats. We've got the new gen ready to step up. And then we wouldn't have had to have the Buu arc. If we were talking about any of these arcs versus the Buu arc, I would have put any of them head and shoulders above it. So, yeah, I think it's a more satisfying like ending in terms of ending a story. But I guess the Freeza arc was never felt that way, that it was going to be the end. You always felt like there was going to be something after that. Maybe not for Goku, in terms of it would have been a believable death for Goku, like dying the hero, taking down Frieza. I guess it would have been interesting to see how the characters would have got over it if he was taken away in a different way like that. You know, not by choice, not as like the sacrifice and not just deciding to stay deaf. But yeah, I agree with you that it's a more like it's a iconic conclusion. That Gohan Super Saiyan 2 transformation, you probably see that more in terms of media on like games and things like that more often than you do see the original Super Saiyan transformation. You definitely see it more than you see Super Saiyan 3, which is sort of just like a pointless addition. And you definitely see it more than the red and the blue, and maybe there's only like Ultra Instinct that's seen out of Super anywhere near that amount of times. So yeah, I think it's probably the most iconic transformation, even though I don't think that it's the best one.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the original Super Saiyan is the most iconic. I mean, anytime people think of Dragon Ball, it's always Super Saiyan. And then these days, whenever people think of Dragon Ball Super, it's Ultra Instinct. So I would probably say that Super Saiyan is the most iconic in the original Dragon Ball. And then Ultra Instinct is the most iconic whenever it comes to Super. But yeah, I mean, I think that we pretty much covered everything, unless if you want to add anything more.
The thing that I really like about the Namek arc is getting off-world as well. I thought that was really interesting in terms of Piccolo's development. I thought it was a big arc for him, and it was nice just seeing a different planet, which I guess is a lot of what Super's took off, is where we've seen more places other than just Earth. It all comes from there, because it was like our first kind of off-world adventure. The Cell arc, like I say, it was more darker. I think Bulma's used well in both arcs. I think she's worth a mention. We've not mentioned really any of the side characters that weren't involved in battles, but I really like Bulma on Namek. I think she's used really, really well.
Yeah, I mean, she doesn't really do too much besides pilot the ship there, and then at least in the Cell arc, she informs everybody about like what Dr. Gero's all about. So there's that too, and just in general, she's probably like top 5 most important characters in the series. Like Dragon Ball would not be what it is right now if it wasn't for her. So there's that too. But I agree with you that them being on a different planet was a really good way to shake things up, because like they couldn't really like have like a home or anything like that, or like a hub center to gather at, or really have any resources that they didn't bring with them. If they forgot something, they pretty much were stuck there how it was, and their whole thing of having to wait for Goku did bring a lot of tension at the time whenever I watched it.
Yeah, that waiting for Goku was good. It was all really good, and I added so many different kind of races, and I guess we don't even know the names of half the races that we see in kind of Frieza's Force. So it evolved the story well, and it went. But would you say the escalation was like too much? Maybe that is where probably the escalation problems became a thing for Dragon Ball, is moving from the Saiyan arc onto this stuff.
Yeah, it might have been too much too soon, because they went right from just like a really powerful alien race to just like the strongest in the universe. And at that point, it kind of felt like, oh no, what are they gonna do now? Oh no, power creep. And the next big thing was just to make. So, I mean, I guess like somehow these androids are able to be more powerful than Frieza and all that, and then I guess the next logical step would be to make like a petri dish of basically everything powerful: Saiyan, Namekian, Freeza race, and then on top of that, that organic being goes and absorbs the 2 androids that are stronger than Frieza, and then becomes like super powerful. And so I could see what you mean there.
And then you had all the grades of Super Saiyan, and then to Super Saiyan, would you say it was watered down because of this legendary form that nobody achieved for so long? Suddenly we get everybody going above it. Do you know, like that? Like it sort of watered down the whole message behind Super Saiyan for me a little bit, the Cell arc, which I could say was a problem with it.
Yeah, it kind of took away the legendary status from the Super Saiyan. I would say that's just kind of like one small thing, because like whenever Trunks appeared as a Super Saiyan, I was like, whoa, another Super Saiyan. And then once Vegeta became a Super Saiyan, it's just like, okay, everybody's gonna become a Super Saiyan now, huh? What's next? Gohan's gonna become a Super Saiyan? And then it happened. I was like, well, but But the whole thing is, like, I was like, well, at least they utilized it really, really good, because now Gohan achieved this new Super Saiyan form that has, like, all this lightning and even spikier hair, and it really makes sense with, like, for it to be his own transformation. And then, this is unrelated, but then in the Buu arc, everybody has Super Saiyan 2, so it's like, ah, man, now this form that I thought was unique to Gohan is no longer unique. And then yeah, and then the same thing happens with Goku. He achieves Super Saiyan 3, and it's like, oh man, this is awesome. Goku achieves Super Saiyan 3 through being dead for so long and training for so many years. There's no way that anybody else can get it. And then Gotenks gets it.
Super Saiyan Freeza is just the biggest waste of time ever. I don't know why he bothered drawing that, because it just did nothing. he could have just killed Buu.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not the fault of the Frieza arc that Super Saiyan eventually became the bargain sale that it was. Because in the Frieza arc, there was all this build-up to it, and it worked really, really well, because you kept wondering, like, what a Super Saiyan was, because Vegeta said that he claimed to be one, turned out he wasn't, and then you got this new form with Goku, and it was really, really awesome seeing that for the first time.
Just two good arcs. It's so hard picking a favourite. I mean, if you had to score them both out of 10, I would say I would give the Freeza arc sort of. It's not my favourite arc in Dragon Ball, which is interesting to say. That would either be the Saiyan or the middle tournament. But I think the Freeza arc I would probably give a good 9 out of 10 in terms of Dragon Ball, whereas I'd give, like I say, the tournament a 10, and I would give the Saiyan arc a 10. I would give the Freeza arc a 9, and I would give the Cell arc an 8, and I think it was after the Cell arc that it dropped off. How would you kind of score these arcs?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that that's a pretty fair rating, even though I think that the Frieza and Cell arcs are very neck and neck whenever it comes to what I prefer out of Dragon Ball and what I enjoy out of Dragon Ball. Like, I would probably give both the Frieza and Cell arcs 9 out of 10, Saiyan 10 out of 10. Because, like, my whole thing is, I think that the Cell arc has 3 really big things going for it. 1, the start is way better than the Frieza arc, and the ending is way better than the Frieza arc. And then the third thing is, I think that it has better overall moments. But whenever it comes to the Frieza arc, I think that it's structured a lot better and is more cohesive in general, that there aren't, like, all these plot holes and, like, little nitpicky things that you can really pick apart and tear up. Because, like, the Cell arc does suffer from that, but I think it makes up for it because it has really good moments. And like I said earlier, I think that really good moments and execution can overcome plot holes if those moments and execution is good enough.
I think the deaths in the Freezer arc got me a lot more. You know, like Vegeta dying, the Krillin one, and the Piccolo thing in the, like, Cell arc. I don't think that any of the, like, Goku's death. Yeah, Trunks was just like it hit Vegeta, but it was sort of like he was back so quick. So yeah, I think the death and the risk felt more to me in the Freezer arc than it did in the Cell arc. Even though Cell's obviously a lot stronger, I don't know. It had more sense of doom. I guess it was the wait for the tournament and things like that made the sense of doom a lot less.
Yeah, I feel that same way, just because in the Frieza arc, the actual story has all the emotional moments, but whenever it comes to the Cell arc, the side story, like History of Trunks, is the one that has the emotional moments, not necessarily the arc itself. So, I mean, again, I think that both these arcs have their pluses and minuses and all that, but at the end of the day, I think that they're both fantastic. But if I had to choose, the Frieza arc just slightly edges out for me, because I guess I prefer a more cohesive story that just flows really excellently than a story that has all these series of good moments, but it kind of has all these little tiny things that you could pick apart.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear everyone in the comment section tell us your favourite out of the two.
Yeah, do the same. And if you guys aren't already, and I don't imagine why you wouldn't, you gotta subscribe to Dragon Ball Dad. He has excellent podcasts, and I believe that they're come out every week or so, every Sunday.
They did. I'm having a little break at the minute. I'll probably be returning just to play the new Pokemon when it comes out, doing a couple of streams while I decide what sort of content I want to make in the future. But yeah, it'll be back active again at some point soon.
Yeah, you heard him, so be sure to tune into his live streams if you want to see somebody play Pokemon. He's somebody who interacts with his chat all the time, so you're not going to be somebody just screaming out into the void. But anyways, guys, let us know what you think in the comments section. And with that, thanks for watching and have a great day.
Yeah, bye everyone.